After learning that Harvey Jepson was coming home today, I woke up early in the morning and brought out all the souvenirs and little trinkets from all over the world that I'd bought for him, lining them up neatly on the table to welcome him back. I also told my housekeeper, Fiona Zeller, to prepare all of his favorite dishes for dinner. Just then, the front door opened and Harvey entered the house with his first love and ex-girlfriend, Debbie Grayson. I was completely shocked. Debbie strode over toward me and greeted me while gently rubbing her belly. "It's been a while, Belle." I stared at her belly, slightly protruding now, and felt a rush of anger. Debbie seemed to have noticed the change in my emotions and hurriedly came over to grab my wrist, saying shyly, "Don't get angry, Belle. Everything is my fault. If you must blame someone, blame it on me. Don't lash out at Harv and hurt him." That was all that Belle said, but it was enough to ignite the bomb that exploded in my mind. I hadn't even said a single word, but yet she had told me everything I needed to know. Harvey stood to the side, watching my reaction, looking like he was going to rush up to protect Debbie from my wrath at any moment. I clenched my fists by my sides and glared at Harvey. "Aren't you going to explain anything?" After that, he just sighed and pulled Debbie toward him. "Come with me to pick out a room that you like. Leave the rest to me." Harvey's gentle demeanor got me completely stunned. He had never been gentle with me before in our 5 years of marriage. He then helped Debbie upstairs while keeping a strict eye on me. The driver, Tim Cruz, then brought in 3 huge suitcases. I figured that Debbie had probably brought half of all her belongings with her. Debbie looked a lot more rosy and healthy than me, but Harvey still kept fussing over her like she was some fragile porcelain doll. I just fell back onto the couch, waiting for Harvey to settle her down and give me an explanation for all of this. However, as I heard them laughing and giggling with each other upstairs, I couldn't stand it any longer and was about to rush upstairs when the doorbell suddenly rang at Harvey's. Parents, Alex Jepson and Sandra Munster, stormed into the house with a dark look on their faces. They bypassed me as if they never even caught sight of me and headed straight up the stairs. I went up after them and saw Harvey coming clean to his parents with a sincere look on his face. "It's not that I'm purposely hiding this from you both, but Deb's pregnancy is still unstable and I was worried that something bad or unexpected would happen afterward. I hope that you'll both understand me. Debs and I are deeply in love with each other. Also, the baby she's carrying is your grandchild. Please don't put the blame on the baby." I recalled the past 5 years of my marriage with Harvey. Whenever I had a disagreement with Sandra, Harvey would always tell me to back off, citing that his mother was getting old and that I should be more patient with her. He had never once taken my side. I had always thought that Harvey's personality was like that. However, now that I witnessed how protective he was with Debbie, I realized that I had been the family jester all along. Debbie then pulled on Sandra's hand and said, "I didn't mean to intrude on Harv's marriage. It was never my intention to begin with. But Harv and I love each other, and we're serious about each other. I hope that you and Mr. Jepson can both be more understanding with us." Sandra's frown gradually eased up when she heard Debbie's words. Then, she glanced at me, who was still standing outside the door that I knew that she was debating with herself. I had been giving her monthly allowances for the past 5 years, and anyone could tell that Debbie's financial situation was no match for mine. I felt my heart plunging into freezing cold water. Harvey was my husband, but he never even bothered to give me a heads up about the situation. Instead, he chose to put me on the spot to humiliate me. Was it because he thought that I rarely ever lost my temper, hence I had no self-esteem of my own? Seeing the situation turn silent, Debbie suddenly started to sob. "My baby is innocent. I will give birth to it no matter what. You can yell at me or point fingers at me or call me names, but I hope that you won't hurt my baby." Her fat teardrops began splashing down her face, making her look a pitiful sight. Harvey felt sorry for her and tried wiping away Debbie's tears. Then he spoke impatiently. "Mom, give her an answer. You know that we shouldn't trigger pregnant women because their emotions are unstable. Harvey's parents had been asking us for a grandchild ever since we got married, but I hadn't been able to conceive all these years. Of course, I also knew that Alex and Sandra had been gossiping about me behind their backs, thinking that this was their way of finally getting the grandchild they wanted. Alex, who'd been silent up until now, finally spoke up. Since Debbie is carrying a Jepson heir, everyone should just bear with it and watch our tempers around her. Just as he was done speaking, suddenly everyone turned to look at me. They were each looking at me so similarly that I began to think that they were the actual family, and I was the homewrecker instead. I chuckled coldly and said, "So, is nobody going to ask me for my opinion at all?" Seeing that I looked displeased, Harvey got mad and shielded Debbie behind him. Then, he started interrogating me. "Balsalo, are you deaf? I've already told you everything. What else do you want to know?" I couldn't stop myself from laughing coldly. My husband, Harvey Jepson, had just returned home from a business trip that lasted well over 6 months, and this was the surprise he prepared for me. He didn't even bother explaining himself to me, but expected that I should accept everything with grace and open arms. When Debbie saw that I refused to say another thing, she started to sob again. She tugged on Harvey's hand and said in a shaky voice, "Harv, I think Belle is mad at me. Maybe I should leave after all." Sandra's face fell when she heard that. She immediately said, "No way. You're bearing our grandchild. How could we possibly make you leave?" Then, Harvey glared at me and said, "Say something. Look at how much you're frightening Debbie. The child in Debbie's belly is mine. If you have any opinions about it, you're only allowed to take it out on me. I refuse to let you harm a single hair on her head." Then, Debbie grabbed Harvey's wrist and said, "No. Harv, I don't want you to get hurt either. I'll feel terrible if anything bad happens to you." Debbie's words somehow brought Harvey to tears. Meanwhile, Alex and Sandra nodded their heads in approval, seemingly satisfied with Debbie. I didn't want to listen to another word more and turned to leave. I locked myself in the master bedroom and didn't come out for the whole afternoon. The sounds of laughter coming from the living room were too piercing for my ears. Later that afternoon, Fiona knocked on the door and let herself in. She told me that Debbie had insisted on taking over the master bedroom, but Sandra stopped her. She said that you came from the Salo family, after all, and they still needed your help with other things around the house, so they couldn't afford to get on your bad side. She even said, Fiona had been my nanny growing up in the Salo household. She knew my temperament well, so she paused midway through and looked at me, trying to gauge my expression before she continued. Seeing that I didn't interrupt her, she said, "She even said that all of Debbie's postnatal expenses will be borne by you, since you can't give birth, so this was one of the ways that you could be part of the pregnancy too." When Fiona said this, my face darkened immediately. I adjusted my sleeves and asked, "Anything else?" Fiona went on. She said that since you're childless, everything you own will also go to this child in the future. I couldn't stop myself from laughing out loud. The Jepsons sure knew how to plan ahead. Although I was fuming with anger, I never let it show on my face. I knew that this wasn't the time. Fiona asked me what my next plans were. I just smiled at her and told her to treat everything as usual. She then brought me lunch. After eating, I sat at my bedroom window and looked out downstairs. Harvey was taking Debbie out right then. Memories of the past started flooding my mind. It was also an afternoon like this, 5 years ago, when I went home to my parents and tearfully begged them to let me marry Harvey. Mom and Dad already had another candidate in mind for my future partner. They were particularly fond of Adrian Lysander, the only son of the esteemed Lysander family who owned Lysander Group. Lysander Group was one of the top companies in Jennerville, and the family was likewise held in very high regard. I had been neighbors with Adrian since young, and Mom and Dad had always liked him. They even often invited him over for lunch. However, I had never had any romantic feelings for Adrian. After getting to know Harvey, I spent all of my days pursuing him and dating him. Obviously not caring about marrying into the Lysander family to supposedly strengthen our business relationships or anything of the sort. I kept telling my parents that it was the 21st century now, and I was going to be in charge of my own love life. I wanted control over who I was going to marry. Also, I insisted that Adrian didn't like me like that either. Still, Mom and Dad tried changing my mind, saying that Adrian would never have offered to send me home every time I went out if he didn't harbor any feelings for me. To be honest, I hadn't cared about what Adrian thought of me back then, or whether he liked me or not. I first met Harvey on the first day of college, when we both reached for the same application form to register for our social clubs. Harvey had apologized like a gentleman and offered me the form instead. He had been wearing a gray athleisure set that day and looked like a total college heartthrob. He was very tall too, and his smile was warm and bright like the sun's rays. He also had a pair of the most beautiful hands I had ever seen in my life. I had a sort of hand fetish, and I just couldn't resist him. Our meeting had been so sudden and fateful that I just couldn't forget his phone number. Even if I wanted to, I added him on WhatsApp after that. When I finally told him my name, he replied instantly without hesitation. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Miss Sallow. I've been hearing good things about you." From that day onward, I would find myself wanting to create coincidences where I'd bump into him on the way to classes. In fact, I did everything I could to get myself into the student council because I wanted to be in the same room with him just for a while more. Time passed quickly, and I had always been content with living in his shadow. After getting married, Harvey offered to take up all of my responsibilities at my company, helping me manage it while I spent my days at home however I wished. Like any other billionaire's wife, I didn't turn him down. After all, I thought that spouses should help each other out. Since Harvey came from a middle-class family, I thought that I should give him a hand if he wanted to improve himself by taking up responsibilities at the company. My parents and my best friend, Kelly Finch, all told me to carefully think it over. After all, Mom and Dad had already warned me before marrying Harvey that he hadn't married me simply because he was in love with me. He was also in love with my wealth. I had then told them that I didn't care. There wouldn't be a problem as long as he still loved me with all his heart. After our wedding, Alex's and Sandra's lives also took a major turn for the better. They both resigned from their day jobs and spent the rest of their days frolicking wherever they wanted with the monthly allowances from us. They would even proudly show off to the world that Harvey was a big shot now, being the CEO of a huge corporation. And this caused plenty of their own relatives to come around asking for handouts. Those relatives of theirs even managed to get Harvey to arrange blind dates for them, wanting him to set them up with other big shots and wealthy people in Jenner Vild. I never felt anxious about the Jepsons doing any of these. My thought back then was that I was wealthy enough to help them with whatever they needed. These handouts would barely cause a dent in our net worth. However, Harvey never knew that Adrian had come looking for me once, just before the day of our wedding. He then handed me an equity transfer agreement, telling me that he hoped I would sign the agreement so that if my marriage went south, I would still have the guts and support I needed to leave Harvey. He had even clenched his fists beside him and told me sincerely, "You don't just have the Sallows supporting you, I will also always be there for you. If that man ever harms you one day, I will never forgive him." I chuckled and told him that he was overthinking again. I had always been confident about my taste in people, and I believed that Harvey would never let me down. Now, it seemed as though everyone had been right about Harvey. They had been warning me about him. It was just that I'd been so blinded by love in the past that I couldn't care less about what they said. After getting married, Harvey would always try to pick faults with me no matter how much I tried to please him. He would criticize me for not knowing how to properly do household chores, tell me off for having a temper, and compare me with his other friends' wives, saying that I couldn't even compare to them. I had been so smitten with Harvey back then that I tried changing all of my ways to suit him. He liked it when I came to greet him every time he came home from work, so I often stayed at home to welcome him back. I would even try my hand at his favorite dishes so that I could recreate them for him. Kelly often told me that I had lost more and more of my own identity after marrying him. I used to be a huge shopaholic and traveled often, but I was slowly getting rid of my hobbies and interests, changing myself for another man. Alex and Sandra were very satisfied with me. They would often praise me, calling me sweet, kind, and beautiful in front of their relatives at dinners and events. In fact, the only person in the Jepson family who would ever criticize me was Harvey. I had always thought that I was the problem. But now, I finally understood that I had been nothing but a mere stepping stone for Harvey after all. He had never truly loved me. So, of course, he never thought that I was ever good enough for him. And with that, Debbie continued living under my roof, without anyone else ever consulting me for my opinion. That night, Debbie knocked on my door asking me to go down for dinner. After rejecting her thrice, she started crying loudly outside my door. She continued wailing like a banshee outside my door, attracting Harvey's attention at once. She then told him, "I think Belle hates me." I asked her to come down for dinner, and she started yelling insults at me. I opened my door with a dark expression, staring at Debbie, who was crying her eyes out. Harvey immediately rushed up and pulled Debbie into his arms. "Don't cry anymore. Leave this to me." Debbie then pulled out a hair clip from her pocket and handed it to me. "Belle, this is something I made myself. Please accept it. Can't we just get along well after this?" Before she could even finish her sentence, I interrupted her, saying, "In your dreams. What's the point of your pretense? Who do you think you're trying to fool?" Debbie then retreated into Harvey's arms as soon as I was done speaking. Harvey was so mad that he rushed up to me and gave me a tight slap. "Belle Sallow, I've already warned you before. Debs is pregnant. You shouldn't have triggered her emotions like this. You're such an evil bitch. Are you trying to give her a heart attack?" Harvey glared at me like I was a death row inmate, deserving nothing less of the death penalty. His slap completely shattered the last of my feelings for him. I glared angrily at the disgusting couple before me, marched up to Harvey, and slapped him on the face twice. I used up all of my strength, and Harvey's cheeks immediately swelled up. He stared at me in complete disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? How dare you hit me?" I looked at my reddened palms and laughed coldly. "You were the one who started it. Why are you yelling at me now? What's the meaning of this? Did you really think that I, the heiress of Sallow Group, would ever allow you to trample over me just because you felt like it?" Sandra heard the commotion and hurried over to make peace. "Belle, Harvey was just overreacting. Don't blame him for it." Seeing that I still wasn't backing down, she hurriedly tugged on Harvey's sleeve, giving him a few pointed looks. This had been the first and only time Harvey had ever laid his hands on me. I could tell that he was panicking internally, however, maybe because Debbie was still there, or maybe because he was being too egotistical. He just looked away and refused to apologize to me. "Harvey Jepson," Sandra yelled. She knew very well that if we continued being tense at each other like this, Harvey would end up being the one with the short end of the stick. I was rash earlier, but if you had just come down for dinner when Debs told you to, none of this would have happened. How is this even considered an apology? He was just blaming me for being unreasonable at best. I felt my heart sinking into the pits of my stomach. I didn't even bother going down for dinner after that. I didn't see the Jepsons again for the rest of the night. Fiona felt sorry for me and brought me dinner instead. The next morning, I woke up sometime in the afternoon. Seeing that they were preparing to have lunch, I just went out without a word. MY assistant at the company, Joanne Barber, told me that word had gotten around to the company employees about Harvey bringing home a pregnant woman after coming back from his work trip, and there were plenty of people now gossiping about me just half an hour after I'd left. Harvey sent me a text message ordering me to bring home 2 jars of Manuka honey for Debbie. He also told me to bring home some fine jewelry and other gifts for her as a form of apology for angering her yesterday. His domineering tone as he ordered me around made me want to laugh. I replied, "If she wants them, get them yourself." Just as I was done sending the text message, Fiona then told me that Debbie had intercepted all of the health supplements Mom had sent over for me, claiming that they were all beneficial for the baby in her belly. I asked, "What did they say?" Fiona answered with a huff. The Jepsons were practically overjoyed. They told her to take whatever she wanted and tell them if she wanted to eat anything else. Mom often sent me health supplements every 3 months because she was concerned about my health. I never thought that even the Jepsons would want to steal those from me. Even Sandra, who often knew where to draw the line, had allowed it to happen. If that was the case, I didn't need to care about their feelings or their egos anymore. Since they were treating me like this, What was the point of me still defending their fragile egos, after all? I went straight to the company and gathered all of the upper management for a meeting. After learning about the company's latest updates, I decided to reposition myself back at work and informed them, from today onward, I will be taking back control over Sallow Group. Harvey Jepson is now forbidden from even taking a single step into this building.